Hello everyone, nice to see you again on the Boring History channel. Today's story, please listen to a new story with a very good plot. Everyone remember to pay attention and listen. Hey guys, tonight we delve into the chilling final days of a queen whose intelligence and ambition took her to the dizzying heights of power, only to lead her to a terrifying, lonely end. Imagine the rustle of silk gowns turning to the clank of chains, the cheers of a royal progress replaced by the echoing silence of a stone cell. You're right there, in the heart of the Tudor court, a place of glittering spectacle and deadly whispers, where one wrong step, one misspoken word could mean. Well, let's just say you probably won't survive this particular royal drama with your head intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first day of May, 1536. It unfolds with a deceptive, almost cruel loveliness. You find yourself at Greenwich Palace, the air thick with the scent of hawthorn and the distant cheers from the tilt yard. It's May Day, a day for celebration, for chivalry, for the kind of elaborate games that your husband, King Henry VIII, so adores. You are Queen Anne Boleyn, and from your gilded vantage point, you watch the joust. Sunlight glints off polished armor, banners snap in the spring breeze, and for a fleeting moment, perhaps you allow yourself a small, fragile sense of security. After all, you've navigated the treacherous currents of this court for years. You've given Henry a daughter, the bright little Elizabeth, and though the longed-for son has yet to arrive, surely your position is stable? But a faint tremor of unease runs beneath the surface of the festivities. You've noticed the king's attentions wandering, his smiles for you becoming a little too forced, his temper a little too quick. It's a familiar chill, one you felt before, but this time it seems to cling, refusing to dissipate with a witty remark or a carefully chosen gown. You watch Henry, his massive frame dominating the royal box, and you try to read his expression. Is that a flicker of impatience or something darker? It's like trying to decipher the latest court gossip. Half of it is probably nonsense, but the other half could get you, well, uninvited to future parties. Permanently. Then it happens. A messenger arrives, leaning in to whisper in the king's ear. You can't hear the words, but you see the king's face change. His jovial mood evaporates like morning mist. He rises, abrupt and thunderous, his departure from the joust so sudden it sends a ripple of confusion and hushed speculation through the assembled nobles. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't say a word. He simply leaves. And with him it feels like all the warmth, all the light drains from the day, leaving you cold and exposed. That's your first real taste of the shadow beginning to fall, isn't it? That icy knot forming in your stomach. The rest of the day passes in a blur of forced smiles and frantic unspoken questions. Why did he leave? What was the message? Your ladies-in-waiting flutter around you, their attempts at reassurance sounding hollow even to their own ears. You try to maintain your composure, the queen, unruffled, serene. But inside, a storm is brewing. You remember the whispers, the factions at court, the enemies you've made. You, Anne Boleyn, the woman who supplanted Queen Catherine, the woman whose existence is a daily affront to Rome and to those who cling to the old ways. You knew there were risks. You just never thought, this. The summons arrives the next day, May 2nd. Not a polite request for your presence, but a cold, formal command from the King's Council. You are to present yourself for questioning. Questioning about what? The charges, when they are finally, brutally laid out, are almost laughable. In their absurdity, if they weren't so terrifyingly real. High treason, adultery, incest, plotting the king's death, your breath catches in your throat. Adultery with not one, but 5 men, including your own brother, George Boleyn, Lord Rochford. It's a monstrous accusation designed to blacken your name, to turn you into a pariah, a creature of unspeakable sin. You stand there, reeling, as the words echo in the grand chamber. The faces of the counselors are grim, unreadable masks. These are men you knew, men who bowed to you, men who sought your favor. Now they look at you as if you're something venomous. The speed of it all is dizzying. Just days ago, you were queen. Now, you're a prisoner, accused of crimes so heinous they make your blood run cold. The evidence? Flimsy doesn't even begin to cover it. A careless word here, a misinterpreted glance there, a flirtatious jest twisted into a confession of illicit passion. Historians still argue whether Thomas Cromwell, the king's chief minister, meticulously fabricated this web of lies to satisfy Henry's desire for a new wife and a legitimate male heir, or if he was merely the efficient instrument of a king already convinced of your guilt. Whatever the truth, the outcome for you is the same. It's a stark reminder that in the Tudor court, loyalty is as fickle as the English weather, and power is a tightrope walk over a pit of vipers. 1 minute you're the king's most happy, the next you're facing accusations that could strip you of everything, your title, your reputation, your daughter, your very life. The charge of witchcraft wasn't formally brought, but it hung in the air, a convenient undercurrent to explain your supposed unnatural hold over the king and your failure to produce a healthy male heir. Some even whispered that you bore a witch's mark, though no credible contemporary account supports this. A quirky tidbit that later centuries would seize upon to further dramatize your story. The truth is, Henry needed a way out. His passion for you, the passion that had reshaped England's religious landscape, had cooled. Jane Seymour, demure and pliable, waited in the wings. And you, Anne, with your sharp intellect, your fiery temper, and your refusal to be a mere placeholder, had become inconvenient. It's a rather brutal form of royal divorce, isn't it? No need for lengthy annulment proceedings this time around. A swift accusation of treason would do the trick much more efficiently. It seems Henry had a type when it came to discarding wives. If they weren't being divorced, they were apparently plotting his demise. A real catch, that Henry. As the Duke of Norfolk, your own uncle, places you under arrest, you feel the world tilt on its axis. The weight of his hand on your arm is not a comforting touch, but the grip of the state, cold and unyielding. The shadow has not just fallen. It has enveloped you completely. The journey to the Tower of London, that grim fortress of despair, is not made in a queen's litter, but under guard, every splash of the oars on the Thames sounding like a nail being hammered into your coffin. You, who entered the tower in Mainz-Sinon triumph for your coronation, now return to it as a condemned woman. The horror is just beginning to dawn, the full, terrifying scope of what they intend for you. The heavy gates of the Tower of London groan shut behind you, a sound that seems to echo the finality of your situation. You remember, don't you? Your grand procession through these very same gates leading to your coronation? The cheers, the pageantry, the sheer intoxicating power of it all. Now the stones are cold, indifferent, witnesses to centuries of sorrow and fallen fortunes. You're escorted not to the royal apartments you briefly knew, but to the very same chambers where you stayed before that coronation. A cruel irony that doesn't escape you. It's a deliberate twist of the knife, a reminder of how far and how fast you've fallen. The gloom within these ancient walls is palpable. It seeps into your bones, a chilling dampness that no fire can truly dispel. Your ladies-in-waiting are still with you, but their faces are etched with fear, their eyes darting nervously. Some are genuinely loyal, women who have shared your laughter and your triumphs. Others, you suspect, are spies, their ears pricked for any word, any sigh that could be twisted and used against you. It's a truly isolating feeling, being surrounded by people yet utterly, terrifyingly alone. You probably wouldn't trust anyone offering you a biscuit at this point, let alone confide your deepest fears. News filters through, fragmented and terrifying. Mark Smeaton, the court musician, has confessed to adultery with you, under torture, of course. The rack has a way of making people say whatever their tormentors want to hear. Then Sir Henry Norris, a groom of the stool and one of the king's closest companions, is accused. Sir Francis Weston and Sir William Brereton, both gentlemen of the Privy Chamber, follow. The net is closing, not just around you, but around those deemed too close to you, those whose removal would further isolate you and satisfy old scores. And then, the most devastating blow, your own brother, George Boleyn, Lord Rochford, accused of incest with you. The charge is designed to be the most shocking, the most unnatural, the one to paint you as a monster beyond redemption. George, your witty, cultured, beloved brother. You imagine his outrage, his disbelief. He, too, is now a prisoner within these same formidable walls, his fate inextricably, tragically linked to yours. His trial, along with those of the other accused men, is swift. They are all condemned to death. A mainstream historical fact often overlooked in the focus on Anne is the sheer brutality and speed with which these men, some of whom were Henry's intimates, were dispatched. Their trials were a sham, their guilt predetermined. George's trial is particularly heart-wrenching. He defends himself with eloquence and courage, but it's no use. The court is packed, the verdict a foregone conclusion. One quirky tidbit from his trial involves a piece of paper he supposedly snatched and read, which contained the specifics of the incest accusation, causing him to exclaim something to the effect of, "On this evidence, you condemn me?" It was a moment of defiance, but ultimately futile. He is found guilty. His wife, Lady Rochford, Jane Parker, is a key witness against him and against you. Historians still argue whether Lady Rochford's testimony was driven by malice, a desire to save her own skin, or if she genuinely believed the accusations she was fed by your enemies. Her later mental instability and execution lend a tragic complexity to her role in this grim affair. The days leading up to your own trial are a torment. You oscillate between moments of defiance, where your sharp intellect rails against the injustice, and periods of profound despair where the weight of your impending doom crushes you. You write to Henry a desperate, eloquent plea, but it's doubtful he ever even reads it. He's already moved on, his attentions firmly fixed on Jane Seymour. Your letters, if they reach him at all, are likely intercepted by Cromwell, who is meticulously managing every detail of your destruction. It's a masterclass in political annihilation, really. You almost have to admire the ruthless efficiency if it wasn't your own head on the chopping block. You hear of George's execution and those of the other men on May 17th. They are taken to Tower Hill, outside the Tower walls, for a public, brutal spectacle, beheaded with an axe. You can almost hear the roar of the crowd, the thud of the blade. The thought of your brother, so vibrant and full of life, meeting such an end is an agony almost too great to bear. It's a stark message to you, a foretaste of what awaits. There will be no mercy, no reprieve. The king, your husband, the man, for whom you risked everything, has signed their death warrants, and yours is surely next. You spend your time praying, sometimes pacing your chamber like a caged animal. The food brought to you tastes like ash in your mouth. Sleep offers little. Escape, haunted as it is by nightmares. Your ladies observe you, their pity mixed with a palpable fear that your fate might somehow rub off on them. You try to maintain your dignity, to show them the courage of a queen, even a condemned one. But there are moments when the facade cracks, when the terror overwhelms you, and you weep for your lost life, for your daughter Elizabeth, who you will never see grow up. Who will protect her now? Will she even remember you? It's a thought that cuts deeper than any axe. The tower itself seems to breathe an atmosphere of sorrow. You think of all the others who have been imprisoned here, kings, queens, nobles, traitors real and imagined. You are now one of them, your name added to its grim roster. You recall tales of prisoners scratching messages into the stone walls, a desperate desire to leave some trace, some testament to their existence. The graffiti of the damned. Perhaps you even run your fingers over the cold, rough-hewn stones, wondering who else has touched this very spot in their final, despairing hours. It's a peculiar kind of fellowship, this community of the condemned. Not exactly the exclusive club you were hoping to join when you first caught the king's eye. The world outside your prison walls continues, oblivious or perhaps titillated by your plight. London buzzes with rumors, with morbid curiosity. But here, in your stone cage, time slows to a crawl, each passing hour a heavy step towards the inevitable. The uncertainty is a torture in itself. When will it happen? How? You cling to any sliver of hope, however faint. Perhaps the king will relent. Perhaps there will be a last-minute pardon. But deep down, you know, Henry. You know the implacable will that, once set on a course, will not be swayed. And you know that your doom was sealed the moment he decided he wanted another woman. Another chance for a son, Weston and Brereton, hangs heavy in the air of your chamber. Each name is a fresh stab of grief. The news, when it finally arrives, is delivered with a chilling formality that does, a confirmation of the king's implacable resolve. You try to picture Henry's face as he signed little to soften the blow. Your trial is set for May 15th, just 2 days after your brother George those death warrants. Was there a flicker of hesitation? A moment of regret for the men who had served him? Laugh's condemnation. It will not be a public spectacle like The men's trials on Tower Hill, but a more with him? Or was his heart already so calloused, so focused on his own desires, that their lives were merely dignified, a fair within the King's Hall of the Tower of London? A trial by your peers, presided obstacles to be swept aside? You suspect the latter. It's a chilling thought, to realize the man you once loved, over by your own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. The irony is so thick, you could spread it on your morning bread. The man who moved heaven and earth, or at least England and Rome, to marry you, could now so coldly orchestra, if you had any appetite left, that is. Peers who are by now, undoubtedly, terrified of incurring the King's your demise and that of your closest circle. Your own trial on May 15th, 2 days before George wrath by showing you any leniency. It's less a trial and more a meticulously choreographed performance leading to Anne's death, had been a masterclass in judicial theater, held in the King's Hall within the Tower of Inevitable Conclusion. You spend those intervening days in a haze of prayer and attempts to compose yourself. You are Anne Boleyn. London, it was presided over by your own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, a man who had never hidden his disdain for you were Queen of England. You will not go to your death a whimpering wreck. You owe it to yourself, to your daughter, you and your reformist leanings. Talk about a kangaroo court. Your uncle as the judge? You'd have to face this with the courage they are trying so desperately to strip from you. But the nights are long, filled with the better odds betting on a snowball's chance in, well, a very hot place. The charges were read out again, echoing footsteps of guards and the distant, mournful cries of unseen birds. Each creak of the ancient timbers, each rattle, adultery, incest, treason. You denied them all, eloquently and fiercely. You spoke with the intelligence and spirit that had first of a chain, sounds like a harbinger of your doom. Sleep, when it comes, is fleeting and filled with shadows captivated a king. But now, those same qualities seemed only to inflame your accusers. During this period of agonizing waiting, a strange detail emerges concerning King Henry VIII. While you languish in the Tower aided, their testimonies coached, their fear palpable. Lady Rochford, your sister-in-law, repeated her poisonous, your fate hanging by a thread. He is reportedly engaging in his usual courtly pastimes, including hunting and perhaps claims against you and George. Lady Worcester, another of your ladies-in-waiting, spoke of your supposed indiscretions, even composing music. It's a display of such profound indifference, it almost defies belief. He, who once moved heaven, her words carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage. Historians still argue whether these women were coerced, or if they harb and earth, or at least England and Rome, to marry you, now seems utterly detached from your suffering. This ored genuine grievances, or perhaps saw an opportunity to advance their own positions in the viper's nest of the court. Regardless, coldness is perhaps more terrifying than any overt act of cruelty. It signifies a complete emotional severance, a chilling finality, too, of their motives. Their words helped weave the tapestry of your guilt. You looked for a friendly face in the crowd of your relationship. It's as if you've already ceased to exist for him, a mere obstacle that will soon be removed. Peers assembled to judge you, but saw only calculation, or fear, or a grim satisfaction. Then comes the decision that on the surface might seem like a strange course, was guilty. There was never any doubt. As Norfolk pronounced the sentence, to be burned alive or beheaded, at sort of mercy, but in reality is just another layer to this horrifying charade. Henry, in his "Great the King's pleasure, you remained composed, a queen to the last. But inside, surely, your heart shattered, burning, a death reserved for heretics and women convicted of treason. The sheer horror of it must have been unimaginable. Clemency decides you will not be burned at the stake, the traditional punishment for women convicted of high treason. Nor you appealed to the king, not for your life, you knew that was forfeit, but for the mercy of a will. You suffer the clumsy, often gruesome beheading by axe that is the common lot. No, for you, he has less agonizing death, beheading by sword rather than the common axe. It was a small concession, perhaps, but one that mattered, decreed a more refined death. He is summoning an expert swordsman from Calais, a specialist in the art of decap, in a world where the manner of one's death was laden with significance. And here, you catch a glimpse of henrietation by sword, renowned for his speed and precision. The very idea is grotesque. An expert executioner imported chilling indifference, mixed perhaps with a peculiar, twisted form of respect for the woman he had once adored. He grants your request. Not only will you be beheaded, but you will be beheaded by a swordsman, not like a fine wine or a skilled artisan, specifically for your demise. It's presented as a kindness, a way clumsy, often brutal, axeman. And not just any swordsman. He is summoning an expert from Calais, a French, to ensure a swift, clean end. But you can't help but feel it's also another demonstration of Henry's territory then held by England. This executioner is renowned for his skill, his ability to dispatch his victims with a single power, his ability to orchestrate every detail of your death, to make it a unique and memorable event. 1-4 swift stroke. It's presented as an act of mercy, a final, macabre courtesy. But you can the history books, you suppose, though you'd rather not be the star of this particular chapter. The fact that Calais help, but feel the cold, calculation behind it. Henry wants your death to be clean, quick, and undeniable. No was, at this time, an English possession on French soil, meant that sourcing such an individual was within Henry's direct purview. Messy, botched executions that might stir public sympathy or, worse, make him look incompetent. The wait for. This Calais. The swordsman was a symbol of a more continental and supposedly less brutal method of execution compared to the English swordsman. To arrive extends your agony. Each day that dawns could be your last. You fluctuate between a desire for an axe. You imagine this man, this anonymous Frenchman, making his journey across the Channel. Does he know who he is coming to, all to be over, and a primal terror of the yea, unknown that awaits? The Tower constables and your attendants treat you with a strange kill? Does he care? For him, it's just a job, another neck to sever. The thought sends mixture of deference and pity. You are still nominally a queen, but you are also a dead woman walking, a fresh wave of revulsion through you. This stranger will be the last person you see, his skill the final sensation. A quirky tidbit often mentioned is that the cost of bringing the swordsman from Calais was £23, 6 you experience. It's an intimate, yet terrifyingly impersonal end. Historians still argue whether Henry's decision to shillings and 8 pence, a considerable sum. The king was apparently willing to spare no expense to ensure your execution was bring the Calais swordsman was a genuine, albeit twisted act of mercy, or a calculated move to ensure a less efficient. One might almost call it premium service for the condemned. I bet they didn't offer loyalty points. Messy, more controlled public spectacle, thereby minimizing any potential for the crowd to be swayed by a prolonged or botched execution. Archbishop Cranmer, a man who owed his position to you and your reformist influence, visits you. The logistics of it are probably already being discussed by your captors. Where will it take place? Who will witness it? The Tower, at least, seems genuinely distressed. He had annulled your marriage to Henry just days after your condemnation, declaring it invalid from Green, most likely, a more private setting than Tower Hill, reserved for those of high rank. Fewer eyes, perhaps the start, thus rendering your daughter Elizabeth illegitimate. It was another cruel twist, another stripping away of your identity and but each one will be significant. Counselors, nobles, officials, all there to see the final act of Queen legacy, all to clear the path for Henry's marriage to Jane Seymour. Cranmer hears your final confession. What Anne's tragedy? It's like planning a very exclusive, very grim garden party. Will there be refreshments? Probably not. You confessed, whether it was a litany of fabricated sins to appease your accusers or a desperate unburdening of your soul, remains between you, him, and your God. A mainstream historical fact is that Cranmer, despite his private, you also learn that your marriage to Henry has been annulled. On what grounds, you wonder, with a weary sort anguish, publicly upheld the king's will, a testament to the immense pressure and danger faced by even the highest officials of detachment? Did they claim pre-contract, the old chestnut that was so useful in untangling inconvenient royal marriages, or under Henry VIII? You are told that the execution will take place not on the public scaffold at Tower Hill. Where have they dredged up some other canonical impediment? The specific reasoning given was your own supposed pre-contract with Henry Percy, Earl of Common Traders, met their end, but within the more private confines of Tower Green. This too is presented as a Mercy Northumberland years ago, and the engagement that was broken off and which Percy himself denied under oath existed, but facts, it seems, sparing you the jeers and gawking of the London mob. But it also serves the king's purpose. Amours are remarkably flexible when the king desires a particular outcome. The annulment means your daughter, Elizabeth, is now officially illegitimate, controlled, less public spectacle. Fewer witnesses, less chance of any untoward incidents or expressions of sympathy for you. Henry is managing your death with the same meticulous attention to detail he once devoted to wooing you. The irony is as sharp, another dagger to your heart. Not only are you to die, but your child is to be stripped of her status, her future uncertain. It's a comprehensive demolition of everything you were, everything you built. You prepare yourself. You pray. You think of Elizabeth. You try to find some solace. Swordsman's imminent arrival adds a new, specific horror to your waiting. It's no longer an abstract fear of some meaning in the utter wreckage of your life. You were a queen. You changed the course of English history, and death, but the concrete image of a gleaming blade, wielded by an expert hand. You try to push the thought for what? To end up here, a prisoner, waiting for a foreign swordsman to end your life because your husband desired a way, to focus on your prayers, on finding some measure of peace. but it lurks at the edge of your new wife and a son. It's a brutal, stark reality. The coldness of the king is perhaps consciousness, a cold, sharp premonition. You are caught in this horrifying machine, and it is grinding inexorably the most horrifying aspect of it all. The man who had written you passionate love letters, who had defied the Pope towards its conclusion. The king's will be done, and his will, it is now terrifyingly clear, is you, now calmly arranges the details of your decapitation. It's a testament to his capacity for ruthlessness, his for you to die, and to die in a manner befitting his displeasure, yet tinged with this bizarre, royal, absolute belief in his own divine right to have whatever and whoever he wanted. The customer, as they say, is always right, especially when the customer is a king with an axe to grind. Or in this case, a sword to courtesy of a foreign expert. One might almost expect a thank you note from Henry for your cooperation. In be swung. The days leading up to the arrival of the swordsman from Calais stretch out, each one a tighter turn of the screw. You've been informed of the king's gracious decision regarding the manner of your death, and now the waiting becomes imbued with a specific kind of dread. It's no longer an abstract fear of the axe, but the anticipation of a particular foreign blade. You imagine the journey of this man, this specialist in death, making his way from France, perhaps unaware of the momentous, tragic role he is about to play in English history. Or perhaps he is all too aware, and it adds a certain professional frisson to his task. It's a rather ghoulish thought, isn't it? Like ordering a bespoke suit, but for your own execution. Appeals? Oh, you've tried. You've written letters, eloquent and desperate, to Henry. You've sought the intercession of those you once thought were your allies. But the doors have all slammed shut. Archbishop Cranmer, who had seemed genuinely distressed during his visit, has ultimately proven powerless or unwilling to truly challenge the king's will. He did manage to extract that final hollow victory of annulling your marriage, declaring Elizabeth illegitimate, hardly a comfort to you now. It's a stark lesson in the realities of power. When the king has decided your fate, even the highest churchman in the land can only offer spiritual solace, not a stay of execution. A mainstream historical fact is that Anne Boleyn, in her final days, reportedly fluctuated between moods of despair and a strange, almost hysterical levity. She famously joked with Sir William Kingston, the constable of the Tower, about her little neck, and expressed a hope that the pain would be minimal. This wasn't madness, perhaps, but a coping mechanism, a way to maintain some semblance of control in a situation where she had none. It might also have been a deliberate performance, showing her detractors that she would not be broken, that she would meet her end with courage. The small mercies, if you can even call them that, are few and far between. You are allowed your ladies-in-waiting, though their presence is a double-edged sword, some offering genuine comfort, others clearly there as spies, reporting your every word and mood back to Cromwell or the king. You are granted the solace of the sacrament, a final communion. But these small gestures feel like mere window dressing on the grim reality of your impending slaughter. They do little to alleviate the crushing weight of your situation. It's like being offered a mint just before they push you out of the aeroplane. Thanks, but I think I have bigger concerns right now. You spend hours in prayer, searching for strength, for acceptance. You think of your daughter, Elizabeth, a bright, innocent child who will now grow up motherless, her legitimacy questioned. The pain of that thought is almost unbearable. You pray for her future, for her protection. You wonder if she will ever understand the maelstrom of politics, ambition, and betrayal that led to her mother's death. You hope she inherits your spirit, your intelligence, but not your tragic fate. Historians still argue whether Henry ever truly believed in Anne's guilt, or if he simply needed her gone and treason was the most expedient method. Some suggest he convinced himself of her monstrous betrayal to assuage his own conscience for ordering the death of a woman he once professed to love so deeply. Others maintain he was a cold, calculating tyrant who saw Anne as a political liability and a barrier to his quest for a male heir. The truth, as always, is likely complex, a murky blend of personal desire, political expediency, and perhaps a genuine, if diluted, belief in his own righteousness. A quirky, though grim tidbit relates to the arrangements for your burial, or rather, the lack thereof. There was no grand tomb prepared, no queenly resting place designated. It's said that an arrow chest, found discarded in the tower's armory, was hastily requisitioned to serve as your coffin. It's a detail that speaks volumes about the contempt with which you were ultimately treated, a final petty insult. From queen consort to arrow chest occupant, quite the career trajectory. As the rumored day of the swordsman's arrival approaches, the tension in your chambers becomes almost unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant shout makes you jump. Your ladies watch you with wide, fearful eyes. You try to maintain your composure, to project an image of queenly dignity, but the fear is a cold serpent coiling in your stomach. You catch your reflection in a polished surface, a pale, haunted woman, a shadow of the vibrant, captivating Anne, who once held a king and a kingdom in her thrall. The dawn of May 19, 1536, breaks. This is it. This is the day. There's a stillness in the air, a heavy, expectant silence that seems to press down on the tower. You are informed that the execution is set for this morning on Tower Green. Sir William Kingston arrives to escort you. He is a stern, unyielding man, but even he seems to show a flicker of something akin to pity in his eyes. Or perhaps it's just your imagination, desperately seeking some sign of human compassion in this cold, cruel process. You dress with care. You choose a dark gray or black damask gown, trimmed with ermine, a symbol of your royalty, a final assertion of your status. Your famous dark hair is bound up, your neck exposed. You will not make this easy for them, but you will also not give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. You distribute your few remaining possessions to your weeping ladies, offering them words of comfort, a strange reversal of roles. It's you, the condemned, consoling those who will live. The walk to Tower Green is short, but it feels like an eternity. Each step is heavy, laden with the finality of your journey. You can hear the hushed murmurs of the assembled witnesses, a select crowd of counselors, nobles, and city officials. No common mob here, just the silent, watchful eyes of those who represent the power that is about to extinguish your life. The scaffold is a stark, newly built wooden platform, draped in black. In the center, a block, and standing nearby, a figure you haven't seen before. The swordsman from Calais, his instrument of death likely concealed for now. You take a deep breath. The sun is surprisingly bright. A bird sings somewhere nearby, oblivious to the human tragedy about to unfold. For a fleeting moment, it's just another spring morning. Then, the reality crashes back in. This is your last sunrise, your last breath of fresh air, your last glimpse of the world. The denial of mercy, despite the charade of the skilled executioner, is absolute. Your appeals have failed, your fate sealed. You ascend the few steps onto the scaffold. The wood feels rough beneath your fine shoes. Before you, the small, carefully selected crowd watches in absolute silence. You can pick out faces, members of the King's Council who condemned you, nobles who once curried your favor, even the Lord Mayor of London, here to witness justice being done, or so they would call it. Their expressions are a mixture of grim duty, morbid curiosity, and perhaps, for a few, a carefully concealed satisfaction. You don't see Henry, of course. He wouldn't be here. He's likely miles away, perhaps already celebrating his newfound freedom, his path cleared for Jane Seymour and the elusive male heir. It's probably for the best. His presence would only add another layer of bitter irony to this already surreal nightmare. Sir William Kingston, the Constable of the Tower, stands beside you, his demeanor somber. To your other side, your weeping ladies-in-waiting huddle together, their grief a stark contrast to the stony faces of the officials. You try to offer them a reassuring glance, though what reassurance can you truly give when you are about to die? The swordsman from Calais remains a little apart, a still, ominous figure. You don't look directly at him yet. You will, soon enough. But first, you have something to say. This is your last stage, your final performance, and you intend to play your part with the dignity they have tried so hard to strip from you. You clear your throat. The silence is so profound that the sound seems to carry for miles, though it's only across the small expanse of Tower Green. You begin to speak, your voice surprisingly steady, carrying clearly in the cool morning air. Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law, and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. It's a careful opening, acknowledging the king's justice as you must. To do otherwise would be to invite further retribution, perhaps even upon your daughter. You know your words will be recorded, reported, dissected. Every syllable matters. You continue, I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that, whereof I am accused and condemned to die. Again you tread carefully. No last-minute accusations, no defiant pronouncements of innocence that could be twisted into further treason. You are playing by their rules even now. But then you add a line that, while ostensibly submissive, carries a subtle weight. But I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you, for a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there. Never, and to me he was ever a good, a gentle, and sovereign lord. The praise for Henry is, of course, expected, almost mandatory. But some historians still argue whether the emphasis on his gentleness and mercy was a final, desperate plea for him to reconsider, or a piece of deeply layered sarcasm, understood only by those who knew the true extent of his cruelty. It's a masterful ambiguity, a final Boleyn flourish. It's like saying, my boss is the greatest, most understanding person, while simultaneously slipping your resignation letter under his door with a detailed account of his micromanagement. You then speak of your own judgment. And if any person will meddle of my cause, I require them to judge the best. It's a plea for history, perhaps, for future generations to look beyond the politically motivated charges and see the woman, the queen, you tried to be. A mainstream historical fact is that several contemporary accounts of your speech exist, and while they vary slightly in wording, the core message of piety, submission to the law, and praise for the king remains consistent. This consistency suggests either a very well-rehearsed speech or a collective agreement among observers on the key takeaways. You make no mention of the specific charges against you, the adultery, the incest. To deny them now would be futile and potentially inflammatory. Instead, you focus on your spiritual preparation. And thus I take my leave of the world and of you all, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me. O Lord, have mercy on me. To God I commend my soul. Your voice, though perhaps tinged with emotion, remains clear. You are not hysterical, not pleading for your life. You are facing death with a composure that many in the crowd must find unsettling, perhaps even admirable, though they would never admit it. One quirky or fringe tidbit surrounding your final moments is the legend that your dog, a little Maltese or Spaniel named Pourquoi, a phonetic rendering of pourquoi, why, was either present at the execution or pined away for you afterwards. There's no concrete contemporary evidence for this, but it adds a touch of poignant, sentimental detail to the otherwise grim narrative, a little furry friend, witnessing the ultimate betrayal. It's the kind of detail that makes you want to hug your own pet a little tighter. As you finish speaking, there's a brief, almost stunned silence. Then you turn to your ladies. This is the hardest part. You offer them words of comfort. Entrust your soul to their prayers. You remove your ermine-trimmed cloak and your headdress or hood. One of your ladies, with trembling hands, helps you. Tie a blindfold, traditionally a linen cap or cloth, over your eyes. The world dissolves into darkness. You kneel down on the straw scattered around the block, your posture upright, dignified. You repeat your final prayer. To Jesus Christ. I commend my soul. Lord Jesus, receive my soul. The crowd watches, breathless. This is the moment, the culmination of weeks of political maneuvering, false accusations, and royal fury. You, Anne Boleyn, the woman who changed the course of English religious history, the mother of a future queen, are about to be erased. The air is thick with anticipation, with a kind of horrified fascination. On that green, surrounded by the ancient stones of the tower, under the gaze of men who held your life in their hands, you deliver your last words, a carefully crafted epitaph designed as much for the ears of the king as for the witnesses present. It is a performance of courage, piety, and a subtle, almost imperceptible defiance. The world is now a void of darkness behind the blindfold. You hear the shuffle darkness, and the sound of your own breathing, your own heart pounding in, of your ladies stepping back, their suppressed sobs reaching you as faint, heartbreaking sounds. You hear the rustle of straw, the sudden, terrifying quiet behind the blindfold. You've said your piece, made your peace, or as much as you adjust your position, kneeling upright, your neck deliberately exposed, as instructed. There's a profound, unnatural of it as one can make in such circumstances. You are kneeling, exposed, vulnerable, yet striving for that last shred stillness from the assembled crowd. Even the birds seem to have fallen silent. All your senses are heightened, straining for any indication of queenly composure. You can hear the faint rustle of your ladies' gowns, perhaps a stifled sob, of what is to come. You can smell the damp earth, the faint metallic tang of fear, or perhaps that you can sense the collective held breath of the spectators. Time seems to slow, to stretch, each second an eternity. Where's just your imagination running wild? You focus on your final prayer, repeating the words over and over, a mantra against the terror. Is he? The swordsman. Is he approaching? Is the blade raised? The not knowing in these final moments is that threatens to overwhelm you. Jesu, receive my soul. O Lord God, have pity on my soul. Then, a small, almost insignificant detail, designed perhaps to be a final, merciful deception, is the moment you've been steeling yourself for, the culmination of all those sleepless nights and terrified imaginings. The swords, or maybe just a practical measure by the executioner. According to some accounts, as you knelt there, blindfolded, waiting, man from Calais. You haven't seen him properly, haven't focused on the instrument of your death. Perhaps you might have heard a slight commotion, or perhaps the executioner deliberately made a sound to one side. The intention, if it's better that way. You only know he's there, somewhere close, preparing to do what he was brought. This occurred was to make you turn your head slightly, or to distract you, ensuring your neck was perfectly positioned and here for. The stories said he was swift and expert. You cling to that thought, a desperate hope for a clean that you wouldn't flinch at the last second, potentially botching the stroke. One account suggests the swordsman called out, "Quick end." No bungled. Horror, no repeated blows of a clumsy axe. Just one stroke, and then oblivion. "Boy, fetch my sword," or something similar, causing you to look up or turn. It's a chilling, peace, judgment. You don't know, but anything seems preferable to this agonizing, blind anticipation. Whether that distraction happened or not, this said that the French executioner, perhaps as a final professional courtesy, or perhaps to ensure you remained perfectly still, next sensation is nothing. Or rather, a sudden, shocking absence of sensation. The swordsman of Calais employed a subtle deception. He might have called out, "Boy, bring me my sword," or made some similar exclamation, causing you to instinctively turn your head or crane your neck slightly in the direction of the feigned action. This is by all accounts exceptionally skilled. Unlike the often messy and multiple blows required by an axeman, especially an inexperienced one, the sword offered a cleaner, swifter cut. He would have approached silently from behind or the side as you knelt, his heavy, a much-debated point, a fringe tidbit often repeated in popular histories. Historians still argue whether this distraction actually occurred, or if it's a later embellishment to add drama to an already dramatic event. The purpose, if true, two-handed executioners. Sword, a specialized tool quite different from a fighting sword, held ready. There would have been to ensure your neck was perfectly positioned and that you didn't flinch at the moment of the stroke have been no dramatic whistling arc through the air that you would hear. Just a single, precise, incredibly powerful strike. A grim sort of stage management, ensuring the star of the show hits her final mark. One moment you are kneeling there, blindfolded, praying, your mind a whirl of fear and resignation. The next, oblivion a trick or not, the next sensation is not what you expect. There is no searing pain, no brutal impact. There is only, It is, in its way, a mercy. The horror is concentrated in the anticipation, not in a prolonged, agonizing end. Nothing. A sudden, shocking severance. One moment you are kneeling, praying, your mind filled with a maelstrom of fear. A mainstream historical fact is that the execution by sword was indeed considered more dignified and less painful than by axe, and the skill and faith. The next, there is only silence, only darkness. The swordsman of Calais, true to his reputation, of the Calais executioner, was specifically sought to ensure this. Henry, for all his cruelty, seemed to want this part, was incredibly swift. His heavy, two-handed sword, a weapon designed for precisely this purpose, swept through your, at least, to be relatively clean. Your head, severed in that single expert stroke, would have fallen onto little neck with terrifying efficiency. A mainstream historical fact is that execution by sword was considered more honorable and less painful the straw-strewn scaffold. There are apocryphal tales, beloved by later storytellers, that your eyes than by axe, and required considerable skill to perform correctly with a single blow. The Calais executioner was indeed a master continued to move, or your lips tried to speak after the severance. While medically improbable for any meaningful action, the sheer shock of his gruesome craft. For the onlookers, the scene unfolds with a surreal, almost unbelievable speed. One moment, Anne of such a sight would have been profound. What is more, certain is the immediate visceral reaction of those who witnessed it. Even Boleyn, former Queen of England, is kneeling, a figure of composed dignity despite the blindfold. The next, her for a crowd accustomed to the brutality of Tudor justice, the sight of a queen, so recently powerful and vibrant, reduced head is severed, falling onto the straw-strewn scaffold. Her body for a horrifying instant remains upright, before to a lifeless body and a severed head in an instant must have been deeply unsettling. There would have been a stunned silence slumping forward. It's a shocking, visceral sight, even for a crowd accustomed to the brutality of Tudor justice. There, a collective intake of breath, the thud of your head, the sudden crumpling of your body. These are sounds as a collective intake of breath, a stunned silence that hangs heavy in the air. The swiftness of it is that would have echoed in the minds of the witnesses for a long time. Sir William Kingston would have stepped forward. You're almost more shocking than a prolonged, messy execution would have been. It's over before they've fully processed that ladies, braving the horrific sight, would have rushed to cover your remains, to perform the last, sorrowful duties. It's begun. Your ladies-in-waiting who had been watching through tears let out cries of anguish. Some said they wrapped your head and body in a white cloth, or perhaps fine linen. The dignity you fought to turn away, unable to bear the sight. Others rush forward as if to offer some belated comfort, though there is nothing left to maintain in your final speech was in some small measure accorded to your remains by these loyal women. The swords to comfort. The executioner, his work done, might step back, perhaps wiping his sword. He has fulfilled his contractman, his grim task completed, would have wiped his blade. He was a professional. This was his craft. For him, it is just another successful execution, another demonstration of his skill. He will collect his fee, those 23 pounds, 6 shillings and 8 pence, and return to Calais, his name forever linked. You were another commission fulfilled. He would collect his fee, that 23 pounds, 6 shillings and 8 pence, albeit anonymously for most, with this infamous day. Sir William Kingston, the constable, would then step forward to officially and return to Calais, perhaps carrying the dubious distinction of having executed an English queen, a quirky though macabre tidbit pronounce you dead. The witnesses, the councillors and nobles would observe, their faces impassive, or perhaps betraying a flicker of, is that the profession of executioner was often hereditary, a grim family trade. One wonders if this particular swordsman discussed grim satisfaction that the king's will had been so cleanly and efficiently carried out. The potential for a political martyr, his day's work with his family over dinner. Had a big one today, dear. Queen of England. For a sympathetic figure has been minimized by the speed and professionalism of the act. There were no last bit tense, but a clean job. Probably not the sort of water cooler chat most of us are used to. Minute pleas from you to incite the crowd, no botched swings of the axe to horrify them into pity. Just a swift. The crowd would have dispersed quickly, sobered and perhaps a little shaken. They had witnessed the ultimate demonstration of royal power. Silent end. It's a chillingly effective piece of state-sanctioned killing. You almost have to give the king's will had been done. Anne Boleyn, the woman who had defied tradition, who had flown too close to the sun, was no more. Her intelligence, her ambition, her fiery spirit, all extinguished in a single, silent them points for efficiency, if it wasn't so utterly barbaric. One can imagine them ticking off a box on some stroke. Historians still argue about the exact number of witnesses present on Tower Green, with estimates ranging from a few dozen to perhaps a royal to-do list. Dispose of inconvenient queen, check. The head is quickly, almost furt couple of hundred, but all agree it was a select official gathering, not a public spectacle in the way executions on Tower Ivley, covered perhaps by one of your grieving ladies using a linen cloth. The spectacle is over. The Queen is Hilwer. The intention was to make a statement to the political elite, not to entertain the masses. The swift dead. The problem that was Anne Boleyn has been resolved in the most permanent way possible. The silence that follows the ness of the strike is the one small, cold comfort in this horrific narrative. You did not suffer a lingering, brutal initial shock is profound, broken only by the sounds of weeping from your attendants. The officials would likely disperse quickly, eager to report death. You did not endure the multiple hacking blows of an inexpert axeman that some unfortunate victims of Tudor justice back to the king that his command had been flawlessly executed. The horror of the moment lies not just in the act of killing faced. Your end, when it came, was sudden. But the horror lies not just in the physical act, but in the proceeding, but in its cold, calculated precision, its bureaucratic finality. You, a vibrant, intelligent, ambitious woman, reduced weeks of terror, the false accusations, the betrayal by those you trusted, and the cold, calculated destruction of your life and reputation by the man you had once loved, the king you had served. The strike was swift, but the horror was in an instant to a lifeless form on a blood-stained scaffold. The swift strike indeed. A queen is slain, and with a slow, creeping vine that had choked the life from you long before the swordsman even set foot on English soil. The crowd on Tower Green disperses quickly, their duty done, their morbid curiosity sated. They leave behind a scene of quiet, desolate tragedy. Your ladies-in-waiting, their faces streaked with tears, are left with the gruesome task of tending to your remains. There is no royal bier waiting, no stately procession planned. This is not the funeral of a beloved queen, but the hasty disposal of a condemned traitor. The ermine-trimmed gown you wore, a final assertion of your status, is now stained with your lifeblood. The contrast is grotesque, a stark symbol of your precipitous fall. It's said that finding a suitable container for your body proved a challenge. No coffin had been prepared, an oversight that speaks volumes about the haste and perhaps the contempt with which your final arrangements were handled. A mainstream historical fact is that your remains, both body and head, were placed into an old elm chest, an arrow box, found in the tower's armory. It was too short, and so your body had to be forced in, your head tucked beside or upon your torso. Imagine the scene, your loyal, grieving ladies struggling with this grim task, trying to accord some dignity to your mutilated corpse within the confines of a rough, ill-fitting wooden box. It's a final, profound indignity. You are not to be buried in Westminster Abbey, among the kings and queens of England. You are not even granted a marked grave in a public churchyard. Your final resting place is to be the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the parish church of the Tower of London. It's a place with its own somber history, already the burial site of other notable figures executed within the tower walls, including some of those accused with you, like your brother George. You will lie among the fallen, the disgraced, the traitors. It's a far cry from the hallowed ground you might once have expected as Queen of England. It's like being promised a penthouse suite and ending up in the basement utility closet, next to the discarded mops. The burial itself is swift and unceremonious. There is no pomp, no public mourning, just a small group, likely including your distraught ladies and perhaps a few tower officials, witnessing your anonymous interment under the chapel flagstones. Historians still argue about the exact location of your burial within the chapel, as records were not meticulously kept for such traitors' graves. Later, during Victorian-era renovations of the chapel in 1876, several sets of remains were exhumed, and those believed to be yours were identified, based on the delicacy of the bones and the manner of burial, and reinterred with a memorial plaque. But for centuries, your grave was unmarked, a forgotten spot in a grim chapel. Meanwhile, King Henry VIII is notably absent from all of this. He is, by all accounts, far away from the Tower, perhaps at Hampton Court or Greenwich. He receives news of your execution with, it is said, little outward emotion. His focus has already shifted. One quirky tidbit, though its veracity is debated, claims that Henry was out hunting on the day of your execution. When he heard the cannon fire from the tower that signaled your death, he supposedly exclaimed, "It is done! The deed is done! Unkennel the hounds and let us follow the sport," before riding off to Wiltshire to formally court Jane Seymour. Whether this dramatic scene is true or an embellished piece of anti-Henry propaganda, it captures the essence of his chilling detachment and his eagerness to move on. He certainly didn't waste any time in mourning. In fact, the speed with which Henry remarries is almost indecent. Just one day after your execution, on May 20th, 1536, Henry VIII obtained a special license to marry Jane Seymour. They were formally betrothed on this day. 10 days later, on May 30th, they were married in a private ceremony in the Queen's Closet at Whitehall Palace. It's a breathtakingly swift transition. Less than 2 weeks after your head fell on Tower Green, another woman stood beside Henry as his wife, his queen. The ink on your death warrant was barely dry before he was signing a marriage contract. It's a brutal testament to his determination to secure a legitimate male heir and to erase your memory as quickly as possible. It makes you wonder if he had Jane's wedding outfit picked out before he even signed off on the swordsman's travel expenses. For Jane Seymour and her family, this is a moment of triumph. They have played their cards well, navigating the treacherous currents of the court to achieve the ultimate prize. Jane, with her quiet, demure demeanor, is presented as the antithesis of you, the fiery, outspoken Anne. She is the calm after the storm, the promise of stability, and most importantly, sons. The court, always quick to adapt to the prevailing winds, shifts its allegiance seamlessly. Your supporters fall silent, your enemies rejoice, and the great machinery of the Tudor state grinds on, leaving your tragic story in its wake. The arrow, chest containing your remains, is lowered into its unmarked grave. The flagstones are replaced. Life in the tower and in the kingdom moves on with alarming speed. But the horror of your end, the injustice of your trial, the cold calculation of your husband, these things linger, casting a long shadow. Your hasty grave may be intended to signify your insignificance, your ultimate defeat. But history, as you may have hoped in your final speech, would indeed meddle of your cause and judge you, if not always the best, then certainly with a fascination and sympathy that Henry and your accusers could never have anticipated. The king remarries, eager to begin his new life. But the ghost of Anne Boleyn, the queen he sent to a swordsman's blade, will prove surprisingly difficult to exorcise. The speed of Henry's remarriage to Jane Seymour serves as a brutal postscript to your tragic end. While your body lies in its hasty, unmarked grave within the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the bells that might have tolled for your passing are instead preparing to peal for a new queen. It's a stark demonstration of the king's pragmatism, or perhaps his callousness, depending on your perspective. You are yesterday's news, a problem solved, a chapter firmly closed in his mind. Or so he hopes. Jane Seymour is crowned queen, though not with the same lavish spectacle that accompanied your own coronation. Perhaps Henry is growing more frugal in his old age, or perhaps he's wary of another grand display for a wife who might also prove problematic. Jane is, by all accounts, the polar opposite of you. Where you were vivacious, intelligent, and outspoken, she is demure, quiet, and seemingly subservient. Her motto, "Bound to obey and serve," says it all. She is precisely what Henry, and perhaps the increasingly conservative court, now desires. A placid vessel for the production of male heirs, not a challenging intellectual partner or a political player in her own right. It's like trading in a sports car for a sensible minivan. Less exciting, perhaps, but far more practical for the long haul, or so Henry believes. Your daughter, Elizabeth, is now in a precarious position. Declared illegitimate, motherless, she is largely removed from the line of succession, at least for a time. She is only 2.5 years old when you die. What memories, if any, will she retain of you? Will she be told stories of her mother, the brilliant, ambitious queen who fell so dramatically? Or will your name become a forbidden word, your portrait turned to the wall, your existence effectively erased from her childhood? It's a heartbreaking thought, the idea of your child growing up without knowing the fierce love you undoubtedly bore her. A mainstream historical fact is that despite Anne's execution and Elizabeth's initial bastardization, Elizabeth would eventually inherit the throne and become one of England's most successful and iconic monarchs. A testament, perhaps, to the Boleyn spirit. The horror of your execution doesn't simply evaporate with Henry's new marriage. It lingers in the collective memory of the court, a chilling reminder of the king's absolute power and his capacity for ruthlessness. Those who plotted your downfall, like Thomas Cromwell, might feel a sense of triumph, but even they must recognize the dangerous game they are playing. Loyalty to Henry is a precarious thing. Favor can turn to fury in an instant. The axe that fell for you and for your brother and the other condemned men casts a long shadow over them all. Historians still argue about the long-term impact of your execution on Henry himself. Did he suffer any remorse? Did he ever look at his daughter Elizabeth and see a ghost of the woman he had sent to her death? Outwardly, he showed no signs of regret. He moved on, fathered his longed-for son, Edward, with Jane Seymour, who tragically died shortly after childbirth, and went on to marry 3 more times. Yet, some suggest that the violence and paranoia that characterized his later reign were exacerbated by the brutal acts he committed to secure his desires, including your execution. It's as if the act of destroying you chipped away at some part of his own humanity. A quirky or fringe tidbit that emerged in later centuries with no contemporary basis is the proliferation of ghost stories associated with you. Your headless specter is said to haunt various locations connected to your life and death. Blickling Hall, your supposed birthplace, though this is debated, Hampton Court Palace, Windsor Castle, and of course, the Tower of London. You are often depicted carrying your head under your arm, a classic ghostly trope. These tales, while not historically accurate, speak to the enduring power of your story and the public's fascination with your tragic fate. You became a romantic, Gothic figure, a wronged queen forever seeking justice or peace. It's not exactly the legacy you might have chosen, but it certainly keeps your name alive. Talk about a hauntingly good personal brand. The horror of your execution is not just in the act itself, but in the calculated, systematic way your reputation was destroyed, your allies eliminated, and your very existence erased, all to serve the king's will. It's a story of ambition, love, betrayal, and unimaginable cruelty. You dared to reach for the ultimate prize, and for a time, you held it. But the Game of Thrones in Tudor England was a deadly one, and you, ultimately, became one of its most famous victims. Yet, despite Henry's best efforts to obliterate your memory, you endure. Your story has been told and retold for centuries, in books, plays, films, and yes, even late-night history narrations. You have become a symbol of female ambition, of unjust persecution, of the precariousness of power. The horror of your end is undeniable, but so is the fascination you continue to exert. You are far more than just one of Henry VIII's 6 wives. You are Anne Boleyn, the queen who lost her head, but never truly lost her voice. Your brief, tumultuous reign and your even more dramatic downfall changed England forever, paving the way for the English Reformation and leaving an indelible mark on the course of history. The echoes of your life and your death continue to resonate, a haunting melody that time has not managed to silence. The horror is not forgotten, but neither is the woman at its center. The shadows of the tower begin to lengthen in your mind now, the chill of its ancient stones giving way to a softer, more contemplative quiet. The echoes of Anne's final frantic days, the sharp, terrible glint of the Calais swordsman's blade, the hushed horror of the small crowd on Tower Green. These images, so vivid moments ago, begin to recede, like ripples on a still pond. You've walked with her through the gathering darkness, felt the weight of her despair, the fragile courage of her last stand. It was a journey into a past filled with both splendor and unspeakable cruelty, a reminder of how swiftly fortunes could turn, how precarious life could be under the shadow of an absolute monarch's will. But that particular shadow has passed. The scaffold is long dismantled, the arrow chest turned to dust. The immediate, visceral horror fades into the mists of time, leaving behind a story, a legend, a haunting question of what if? You can let go of that tension now, the tightness in your chest, the sympathetic fear that gripped you as you stood by Anne's side. Her suffering is over, consigned to the pages of history, a poignant chapter in a much larger book. Allow the quiet of your own space to envelop you, the gentle hum of the fan, the soft glow of your dimmed lights. Feel the comfort of your bed, the warmth of your blankets. The terrors of the Tudor court are far removed from this peaceful present. Let the lingering images soften, blur at the edges, becoming less a stark reality and more a fading dream. Anne's story, for all its horror, is now just that, a story. And as you drift towards sleep, may your own dreams be peaceful, untroubled by headless queens or vengeful kings. Sweet dreams. You have just finished listening to the story at home. Goodbye. See you again tomorrow with the story. Good night, everyone.